Pac-Man has been using AI since the 70s, but before I get to that, I have a question. Have you ever gone out for pizza and returned with $1 million idea? Probably not, but this Japanese man did. Pac-Man is the most iconic game in history. Despite being around for over 4 decades, gamers worldwide still play this retro arcade game to this day. Pac-Man is a simple design created with 119 yellow pixels and has stalker ghost friends named Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde. It may be a very simple layout, but this simple and iconic design made a legendary impact in gaming during the 80s. Today, we will take you through the creation of the most well-known game on Earth. Chapter 1. Who created Pac-Man? Pac-Man was born May 22, 1980, created by this Japanese man named Toru Iwatani. Toru Iwatani was born in Tokyo, Japan, on January 25, 1955. In kindergarten, he had a passion for creation and storytelling, so he did a lot of reading and writing. When he wasn't doing that, he would spend all his time drawing his favorite characters from his favorite Japanese comics. As he grew older, he began to have a passion for technology, specifically arcade games and robotics. In high school, Toru would spend 100% of his time doing 2 things, and those were school and video games. Some of his favorite games were Space Invaders, Breakout, and any type of puzzle game. These puzzle games would later lead to the creation of Pac-Man. Chapter 2. Namco. When Toru graduated high school, he decided to continue his education at a university where he earned a degree in electronic engineering. As soon as he graduated, he got a job at Namco, which was the first step to creating Pac-Man. At the time, Namco was a manufacturer of entertainment machines, such as pinball and mechanical driving games. There was a small demand for video games since they were still relatively new. Toru started working as a junior engineer in the company's research and development department. In his role, he designed game mechanics, created game artwork, programmed game logic, and tested prototypes, which sounds like a dream job for techies. Before creating Pac-Man, Toru designed several video game hits, but he had a particular style he wanted to take. He aimed to make games less violent and more accessible to a broader audience, suitable for very young children and those that their parents would enjoy. Toru began experimenting with puzzle games, and they were an instant hit. This is what began the development of many back-to-back puzzle game hits. GB in 1978, then Bomb B and Cutie Q both in 1979, and Libble Rabble in 1983. These games were popping up in arcade stores and pizza joints all over Japan. People couldn't get enough of Namco's engaging game releases, and the secret face behind it all was still up to something big. Chapter 3. The idea. You might be surprised at how Toru came up with Pac-Man, or at least make you hungry. You see, Toru didn't develop the idea by sitting at a drawing board for hours testing different designs. The idea actually came to him when he was out at lunch. Now before I tell you, I want you to take a guess. What food does Pac-Man look like to you? Go ahead and leave your answers in the comment section below. He came up with the idea after seeing a pizza missing a slice. A sudden inspiration struck Toru for a new game, one where a character eats its way through a maze while avoiding enemies. Toru had a lot of doubts about his game and almost scrapped the idea without even presenting it to his boss. But despite all of his self-doubts, Toru at least wanted a second opinion, and to his surprise, the boss loved it, giving him the green light to make the game. Chapter 4. The creation. Toru was sure he wanted to stick to the pizza cutout design because it looked cute and non-threatening, which as we know was his goal for the game, but that was just the beginning. A small team of gaming engineers at Namco led by Toru began working on the game mechanics and visuals, experimenting with different characters and mazes. They landed on these 4 ghosts named Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde. Now look at these colors. They were chosen specifically to be aesthetically appealing and bright enough to capture someone's attention, making it easy to distinguish each of them apart. This is a good thing since these ghosts have very different traits programmed to trap you. Blinky is the leader of the ghosts and the most aggressive, always chasing after Pac-Man. Pinky is the fastest and tries to surprise Pac-Man by cutting off his escape routes. Inky is completely unpredictable. When he is not following behind Blinky, he moves entirely randomly. Lastly, Clyde, the slowest of the ghosts, usually moves away from Pac-Man. Now the programming that went into these ghosts used very complex code that acts as an AI, which was extremely advanced for its time, and the code was all written by Toru himself. Once the game was finished, Toru landed on the name Pac-Man because of its similar appearance to a puck. Also, the word paku-paku means to flap one's mouth open and closed, which is exactly what Pac-Man does. However, the name Pac-Man would later be changed to Pac-Man in the US to avoid kids changing the P in Pac-Man to an F, to make it say, well, you know, something else. Chapter 5. The release May 22nd, 1980 would be the big day for Pac-Man. It was released in arcades and entertainment centers all across Tokyo, and people were hooked, absolutely loving it. It became so popular that they began sending Pac-Man machines to arcades across the United States just months after its release in Japan. Much like in Japan, in the US, demand was skyrocketing. and every arcade owner was dying to buy a Pac-Man machine for their shop to draw consumers in. Pac-Man made over $1 billion in revenue in just its first year. In 1984, they doubled that, generating over $2.5 billion in revenue worldwide, and continued to remain a cultural phenomenon through the 80s, making it the most successful arcade game of all time. Chapter 6. Pac-Man Today. Since then, Pac-Man has shifted from being available only in arcades to various gaming consoles, such as the Pac-Man handheld game by Coleco, which is the first ever handheld Pac-Man game to hit shelves. This handheld Pac-Man game ended up being so successful that they made it available for other consoles, including the Game Boy, DS, GameCube, and even mobile phones. Today in 2023, Pac-Man is still a well-known and respected game enjoyed by millions worldwide. As for Toru Iwatani, he is no longer working on video game development full-time. He now spends his time working as a professor at the Department of Games at Tokyo Polytechnic University. Oh, and before you go, I have this fun fact for you. Did you know that a man named Billy Mitchell was the first person to ever get a perfect score in Pac-Man, scoring a crazy 3,333,360 points?